Sarukkai, Sudha Gopalakrishnan to come and be seated on the seats allotted to them. Friends, on behalf of Raza Foundation and India International Center, we welcome you to this post-summer session of Art Matters. This is 46th in a series, and many of you have attended some of the previous sessions. About 4 or 5 months ago, we converted the panel discussion into a dialogue between a major artist and someone who can provoke that artist to talk about his or her life, vision, struggles, failures, if one is willing to admit publicly, etc. And we had a series of conversations, Krishan Khanna, Pita Singh, Neelima Sheikh, Alarmeel Valli, and now this evening we have Malavika Sarukkai, who most of us know as one of the most glorious dancers on the Bharatanatyam scene and on the scene of the Indian classical dance. She has been on the scene for quite a while, with great energy and verve, and has also expanded the repertoire of her own Bharatanatyam by experimenting and doing thematic presentations. And one of the such presentation was when Raza was turning 85. This is about 10 years ago, when two dancers, Malavika Sarukkai and Prerna Shimali, had presented choreographies based on Raza's painting. As you perhaps know, soon, on 23rd July, there will be the first death anniversary of Raza. And as long as he could make it, he used to be present in these sessions. Sometimes he'll tell me later that I couldn't understand whatever was being said, but it was nice that some people were talking about art. That was his. But he left everything to the foundation, which is a very rich legacy, also of generosity, of care and concern for others, for total dedication to art and nothing else. He lived to paint and painted to live. There was no distance left between that. So we are trying to keep that legacy, and we are organizing a young artist camp. The artists have been chosen from the art schools of Madhya Pradesh and Mandla itself. And some of our senior painters will be conducting the art. They will be painting Narmada. And Raza would never say Narmada, he would always say Narmada Ji, because he would always refer to Narmada as Narmada Ji. And then we have a concert on the banks of Narmada, of Nilgam music, by Kalapni Komkari, who was a favorite singer and who sang many times for Raza. Then we have tomorrow, not providing you any relief. You have rested quite a while. Now is time to devote yourself to a bit of art. Today it is a dance, a conversation with a major dancer. Tomorrow at the India Habitat Center, we have the Kumar Gandhar Memorial Lecture, which will be delivered by Mr. Deepak Raja, who is happily here to listen to this conversation as well. And then on 27th July, we have started a new series featuring poetry, and it will be here at Prabhat Tripathi, Leeladhar Mandloi, Arunab Saurabh, and Astik Vajpayee will be reading their poems. And this is a mixture of seniors and juniors. On 8th August, we have another memorial lecture, Art Matters, in which the well-known Karnataka vocalist T.M. Krishna would be talked to by Ananya Vajpayee. And on the 11th of August, we have the Mani Kaur Memorial Lecture to be delivered by Ashish Radyadhyaksh. So you see, we are giving you a lot of food for thought, for the spirit, if you still have it left, etc. The rules of the game of this conversation are very simple. They are that Sudha Gopalakrishnan would be asking, provoking, etc. Malavika Sarukkai to talk about her life, her struggles, or whatever. She wants to talk about the state of Bharatanatyam, the state of the classical in our time, personal difficulties, if any, etc. So there you are. Sudha, start the conversation. And I'll present you with the bouquets at the end of it, because otherwise we'll mess it up there. And please put off your... Suni?
So first of all, thank you so much to the Raza Foundation, to Mr. Ashok Vajpayee, and also to be presenting and interacting with Ms. Malavika Sarukkai on her art and her dance, and what impels her creativity and her life struggles and all that. So it is a wonderful opportunity, and thank you so much. It is a wonderful experience for me to have talked to you earlier also on how we could proceed with this conversation. I'm not going to introduce Malavika ji to this audience because she's too well known to everyone who's here. She has enthralled audiences across the world with her art, across the world, not just in India but also across the world, I mean. But then today we are going to see her in a new persona, her new persona as a talking person, as a thinking person who thinks deeply about her art, about life and her struggles, and what that has shaped into her own, that is integrated into her own art and her vision of art. This is what I'd like to ask you. But rather than going into biographical details of where you were born and how you started your art, I'd like to ask you about where you see yourself in the line of transmission of a great tradition. By great tradition, I mean Bharatanatyam, which has had several lives before, as first as an act of worship, as a divine votive offering in front of God. Then it became a court dance for entertainment to a wider public, but a general public. Then it goes, after all, I'm not getting into the politics of Bharatanatyam at this moment. It then gets institutionalized into a kind of codified classical, what we quote unquote classical art form. And then of course it also becomes highly individualistic in one sense, honing skills carefully, and also presenting as solo performances in front of another kind of audience perhaps. So it has gone through these lives and also confronted different audiences. To this extent, where do you see yourself in this great line of tradition?
Namaskar. It's a pleasure here to actually talk about dance and things that matter deeply, because I think on a long journey one has reflected on dance and questioned it and been curious about why we do what we do. So presenting here, talking with Sudha ji for the Raza Foundation is really a pleasure. Thank you, Ashok ji, for inviting me here. It's such a big question you've asked me. I think primarily I have, over the last few decades, been concerned about tradition, the first 1 or 2 decades I didn't think too much about it. I just danced because my gurus asked me to dance, and they taught me what they believed was tradition, what they had received, and I continued. But I think after about 2 decades, I started asking many questions. And what I think what was perhaps the core for me was I looking at tradition or change, or was I looking at tradition and change? And I think growing up in an environment where my mother, Saroja Kamakshi, she was such a spirited person, people who've seen her would know, that my home environment was one which was very open, a very dynamic environment where free thinking, questioning was part of it. So growing up, I think, in that environment, I soon found out that I really wanted to be in the sense of presenting tradition and change. But then it gave me very big questions, because then I said, oh, what is tradition? Because if I need to know what it is to move it. And after a point of time, I realized that tradition and Bharatanatyam, which is what we're speaking about, was not so much a style, but it became a language.
How do you distinguish between style and language? Because you have said this before also.
Because I think when I think style, I think these are all personal, interpretations. For me, when I think style, I think it's a margam, I think it's a certain repertoire. And for me, style somehow puts it in a place and a certain sequence which I need to follow. But when I think of it as a language, then I'm sort of deconstructing it, and it's easier for me to make that language my own. Because with language, I feel I can find my voice. If I look at Bharatanatyam as a language, then I think, with this, if I internalize it enough, I can find my voice to say what is me, what is authentic to me. So I think somewhere, these things weren't, it wasn't as if I was, I had a target and I had to get there. But I think it was things which were like working inside me. And as I said, through my discussions, my intense discussions with my mother, I had the freedom to do what I wanted. And I respect tradition, and I respect the structure of tradition, but it was making that my own. So it was evolving something from that. But as Ashokji said, it also helped me just extend the repertoire. And then I felt, with the language, I felt I could say anything I wanted to.
So to that extent, what and who were some of the major influences in your life that shaped your art and creativity?
I think I couldn't sort of go further without acknowledging my gurus, because they were the source of, the fundamentals and also the inspiration. I mean, when I think of Abhinay, I think of Kalanidhi Mami. And this amazing world she opened up for me so generously. And she sort of just took me into her world of beauty and poetry and Shringaram, which was for her predominant. Or Guru Kalyana Sundaram and Rajaratnam sir. To imbibe your guru's aesthetics is also very important, I think, in the classical arts. And I think to go through that phase of being an instrument for their interpretations is also important. So I think at that point, it was my gurus. But through my life, I would say I would not be the dancer I am or the artist I am if it wasn't for my mother. I mean, she was the most amazing personality, and She was not a mother all the time. She was a friend. She was my spiritual guide. She was my manager. She was everything. She was just ruled. She just did everything. And her influence and her need for seeking, I think, sort of became a part of me too. And I keep telling dance students, I said, if you don't seek, you don't find. If you're just sitting with whatever we have and we are comfortable with that and we are in this comfort zone, we don't find. And sometimes in the seeking, we don't always find. And sometimes in the seeking, we risk. And it's dangerous because we are going into the unknown. But I think that sense, that impetus to move and push yourself as a human being, as an artist, to penetrate an art form, I think is important. And in terms of other influences, I think, great artists I've seen when I was growing up, or Yamini Krishnamurti and Sonalji and Sanjukta Panigrihe. I mean, these were great artists. I mean, they were like legends. So if I went to their program, I was completely awestruck. But I was also very young, so often I just go to sleep. And my mother would insist that I have to go and see these programs, and I must have been all of 8 or 9, and I just fall asleep. And then she'd wake me up and say, just see this particular thing of this artist, you have to see it. She'd wake me up, make sure I see it, and then I go back to sleep. But they were influences, and of course, Balama, I mean, I've seen her, I've had the great privilege of seeing her in concert, I mean, when she was presenting, but, and there are moments that are unforgettable. I mean, it's as if it just imprints you at a very personal and very deep level. So it's been many things, I think, over the years which have, I think made me the artist I am, or whatever.
So, you were speaking of tradition in the last time. What exactly do you mean by tradition? And you said that tradition is also seeking. And so what were you seeking through your dance, so that you are interpreting tradition, you are taking it to the next level, you are taking it to an audience? How does that, I don't know whether I should call it baggage or a great burden that you have, or is it a great responsibility that you have? How do you define it, and how does it impact your own language of Bharatanatyam?
No, I think, when you're a young student of dance, actually it's very carefree, because you're just told to dance, you go into a class, your guru teaches you, and you dance, and then you're not really thinking. And that's a nice, carefree place to be. But as I said, 1 or 2 decades down of practice of dance, then you start feeling a kind of responsibility to what you're learning. And that sets you thinking. And that also sets you, looking into yourself to say, what do I believe tradition is? Or respecting the grammar. Because I think for me, I went through a phase, it must have been in my 20s or something, when, my dance became very, very austere. And I remember people were writing about me saying, we don't know why Malavika is doing what she's doing, and there is no joy, and she's just become very austere and very rigid, or things like that. What they didn't understand was that unless I went to that level of austerity, I could not discover freedom. I could not get to freedom if I hadn't touched austerity, if I hadn't made austerity a part of me. And I think all these exercises, I mean, these were just personal exercises I did with myself, helped me go down the verticals of tradition, right? And say, what is the core? How can I penetrate further and further to say what is the essence for me? As I said, essence could be something else for another artist. But for me, what was the essence which I had to hold on to, and which I had to so make my own that it would be authentic, and the voice and what I said thereafter would be authentic and honest, And after that, after going through this phase of austerity and being slightly written off by people, because they didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. I then went to a point when I started saying, okay, now I can let go.
Okay.
Yeah. I can actually take the liberty of stepping beyond what I have known always. So whether it was emotionally stepping out or perhaps creating a movement out of my movement vocabulary, which I had earlier on, I had this nice safe net of movement vocabulary, and then I was doing Shringaram, so I had all the language to do all the nayikas and nayakas and stuff, and then I started walking out of that and said, no, I don't want to just stay with the nayikas, because to answer your first question, I'm thinking of tradition and change, and I'm saying I've moved out. I'm not in a court. I'm not in a temple. I'm addressing audiences from a proscenium stage, and I have a certain freedom to do the kind of work I want to do. So why am I perpetuating this man-centric interpretations? And I know this upset my guru Kalanidhi Mami a lot, because after learning some 10 years with her and going through a lot of padams and javalis, we did so much of Shringaram, and she loved it and she believed in it, which was wonderful. But that was her. That was her point of view. But I asked myself, I said, am I going to be in this environment of just talking about, he came, he didn't, I'm upset, I waited, I lost him, I will find him, I will do, and I said, no, I want to move out of it. I want to look out at the tree and say, what does the tree feel? What is it to be a bird? And through these metaphors, what I actually challenged myself, because I remember choreographing something on the tree. And after getting through the first few, interpretations of Tripataka Hasta for tree, I said, if I have to touch the within of a tree, I have to find treeness. Or I have to find birdness, which is beyond a symbolic gesture. And I wasn't happy just being symbolically, representing stuff. I wanted to get to energies within. And I think that the day I discovered treeness, I was extremely happy. Because I said, oh my God, look at what I have actually touched. Because when I'm looking at a tree, am I just going to be looking at the tree leaf? Or am I looking at the bark? Or am I thinking of the roughness of the bark? Or am I thinking of the roots? Or am I looking at the sap? Or am I thinking of the breeze in the tree? And then I found that if I had to say tree, I had to be all this. I had to embrace everything about a tree to create that moment of treeness. But I don't know, people might think, I'm a little, why is she talking about these things? But this is important for me. It's critical to why I dance and why I think I've also changed the language of dance. I dance differently to what my gurus taught me, and I think that's part of change. And I think I have, my movement vocabulary for Abhinaya is very different. But as I said, this has all happened, we're talking about 20, 30, 40 years.
So would you say that what you're talking about is as tradition and taking it to the next level, the suchness of what you were talking about, the tree and the bird, is it transcending the technique and then seeking something more than what the technique affords you with? Or is it something that you develop out of your own sadhana? How does it convey to an audience who may not be resonant with that what you're talking about? How do you take the audience with you when you talk about such deep feelings and deep...
I just think that, when we, as an artist, if you're working, because the body is your instrument, so that's all you have to say what you want to say, that you have to work it with such a sense of harmony and alignment and clarity, And clarity not only of your Anga Shuddham and stuff, which is, I mean, the basics, but you have to work it with a clarity of intent. What is it you hold in your mind? Every moment I say bird. So it's a sense of awareness that I'm holding within me. And I'm practicing, and my sadhana is to be able to hold that emotional intensity through the piece. But if I am able to do that, then I think that dance communicates an intensity of purpose that an audience just picks up. You know, even if they don't know the dance, you know, always we have this thing in classical dance, oh, I don't know, so I don't come. Saying, oh, why would you do that? If you come and if you see the presence of great art, any kind of great art, you don't need to know. You just need to feel. So if you can be an audience which can come in and feel and empathize and allow yourselves to feel. I mean, you know, sometimes when we have this block which says, oh, we don't understand, you know, we've already put down the guard which says, oh, we're not going to think further, this is it. So as an artist, what I try to do is not only create this intensity of feeling within me, but in the space around me, and thereafter project that energy into the audience. That's a task.
The 40th year of your performance, stage performance, I think you performed in front of the Chidambaram temple, right in front of the deity, and we saw a very transformed you. I mean, there was no need of an audience there. There was nobody watching you. There was no reciprocity that one saw. But then you were in a trance. And so how does one get to that level of communion or whatever you want to delight? What was it that took you there? Would you describe those moments, if you can, in words as you danced in your language?
That's a very difficult question. I think it would be a state of conviction, a state of fluidity of mind and body, so that everything is like alignment, and an energy field around you which is so potent that allows you to focus. But primarily, I think you have to have the conviction to see and vision your dance and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a sense of deep focus. But focus is not attention. I mean, focus is not concentration. Focus, when I say focus, it's awareness. When I say focus, it's a mindfulness. When the whole instrument of the body is so fine-tuned and so alive and so alert and so almost resonating with an energy that you don't see anything else. There's nothing which comes in front of you except, and it needn't be only in the temple. It could be on stage. I mean, if everything is coming right some days, you know, there's just that flow, there's that energy. And then you know you touch another level, you know.
Yeah. So that means, how much do you need an audience then? If it is that you can take it to your own levels of delight or ecstasy, then why is there an audience? I mean, or is it something that happens only rarely? How do you describe the reciprocity between the audience and the dancer?
You know, if we had an audience like Sahridayas and we had Rasikas and they were with me, because you can sense it. I mean, you get on the stage, you sense your audience. You can sense the energy which is coming. Sometimes you also sense, I've often been on stage when, you know, it's almost flat. And I say, oh, what am I going to do today? Because you get on the stage and, you know, the energy is just flat in the audience. But then there are times when, if I'm able to generate enough within me, and therefore the space, then I'm able to get the audience in to see it through my eyes, or to see my vision of dance. So they do matter, but one doesn't always have the best audience. Very often there are times when I feel I'm in my own world of, when I'm visioning something. And some people in the audience pick up that vibration, and some people don't.
That's true.
But I can't go on stage and say I depend today on the audience to inspire. That I want to. Because I think if I get into that habit, it could be an excuse, right? To just not push myself, to just not focus, to just not have that sense of meditative preparedness that I come for a concert. Because I can say, the audience today was like, they were really not good, so I also didn't dance well. I just feel I'm letting myself down, and certainly letting down dance. Certainly. So I would go very well prepared. I would try and focus, make sure nobody comes into my dressing room and chatters. My mother was the only one who was allowed into my dressing room because she would be very quiet and she knew what I was focusing on. And, not be bothered by sponsors, organizers who ask you questions at the last moment. You want this, you want that. Suddenly, just 15 minutes before the show, everybody starts coming into your dressing room. And that's when you really want silence, you want everybody out, you don't want to talk to anybody. But it is, I think what happens actually with classical Bharatanatyam, somewhere, people don't believe we really focus before we get on stage. That's the Kuriyattam they think, that there is focus. I don't know if they think for Bharatanatyam there's focus.
So would you say it is, when you say about that inner meditative process, when you are doing a padam or any abhinaya portion, what is the process of this transformation? Is it you're becoming that person if you are, for example, in the abhinaya portion, if you are acting as Yashoda, who's in interaction with Krishna or is it that you are interpreting that role as a patra? Is it transformation in what sense? Are you becoming the character, or are you saying that so said Yashoda?
No, I would imagine.
Is there a distance, or is there a complete identification?
No, I would imagine that one is becoming character.
I see.
But I think also with this whole process of Natya Dharmi, which I think is important, and that we hold that formality, but it doesn't mean that we don't become character.
Okay.
For example, talking of becoming character, once I did a piece on Hanuman, because this is again my wild streak. When I want to do characters I haven't done, and I'm not satisfied with just doing Shringaram and the man-woman relationship. I did that for about 15 years. I thought that's enough, right? I had to move on. And I did Hanuman. I did it actually here at the IIC. So I finished my piece. I said, I'm not going to do a Tilana and, have that sort of end. I said, after Hanuman has seen Rama, and it's the first vision of Rama, actually I'm on such a high, emotional, spiritual high, I can't come down and start doing a Tilana. So I said, no, it's taken me to another pitch and I cannot come down.
Yes.
But when I did dance it, and I had people who had seen me dance for many, many years, and there were some questions who were saying, but why must you do Hanuman? I said, because I want to. I want to dance this character. I haven't danced this character. I'm not sure how it is, but that sense of bhakti, for me, it was important to touch it, to find it. And I also had responses say, but you look so beautiful and you could have done the Nayikas. And I'm saying, I don't want to remain in this sense of beauty, which I think is, I think that is really quite regressive, to be stuck with the sense of beauty, always beautiful and doing all these characters. I said, I want to throw that aside. I want to throw it, I want to transform. And then I was also told, oh, but did you do... And I said, you know what, if you saw that I did that, then I've really achieved something. Because I didn't. I just became the character and you imagined.
Yeah.
So you know what, I've had a lot of people ask me a lot of questions of why I am going in this direction. Or why I want to do these characters and, you know, sort of really expand this canvas of my repertoire. But I think that's growth for me. That is my personal learning.
Talking about bhakti and also the concept of divine love, which informs a lot of Bharatanatyam performances as also all the other classical dances. There is so many representations of love as desire, as vipralambha, sambhoga, shringaras, as a child, as a mother, as even as an adversary. So these kind of different roles, and when you go to spiritual love in that sense, bhakti in that sense, there are so many shades and variations that you see. And you see that also how when somebody acts, and then there's how, again coming back to the earlier question, when it comes to the plane of divine love and divine understandings, transcendence of the self as it were, how do you achieve that in dance when you do, or is it each time a personal journey for you? I'm basing this question on the performance that I have seen on that Chidambaram dance, which transcended all kinds of limitations of earthly, this in my...
Listen, I think, I don't know, these are just personal experiences, and I'm only speaking from that. I'm not speaking as a scholar or research person, but I can say through personal experience of living dance for so many decades, that all these different characters you spoke about, I mean, there are different routes to bhakti. There are different routes of bhakti, different kinds of bhakti, vatsalyam, different kinds of bhakti. But when I feel that when bhakti comes to a high point, it's one. There is no differentiation. It's almost like if there are different colors which are different strands of bhakti perhaps, right? But when they come to a high point of actual vision of that moment of bhakti, it is colorless. It is one. And I think bhakti is when the self is displaced. I think that is a high point of bhakti. That you build it in different ways, in different narratives, different stories, different situations, characters, everything. But you build it to a point when the self is momentarily displaced. And that is freedom. And that is bhakti. That is a moment of magic. So I think in my bhakti has been important, the spiritual has been important.
That's better question.
It has, and I have, I stay on the banks of it. I do a lot of work which takes me there. But it's these characters are just building it. But when I hit that one point, there is no differentiation. Differentiation vanishes. That is bhakti. But as I said, these are very personal experiences. I don't know if everybody would even agree with this, but as I said, this is my understanding or my living of bhakti.
Thank you. Welcome, taking to another level of, from there I don't know what question I can ask you after that. But there is also a vast corpus of textual corpus that informs a dance form like Bharatanatyam, that too especially Bharatanatyam, coming from the Tamil classical text, the Sangam literature, to the Shilapadigaram, which has a lot to do with dance, all the Padams, Javalis, and also the other tradition of Sanskritic poetry from Jayadeva, also the aesthetic traditions and all that. So how does an actor or a dancer deal with this in her dance. What do you take? What do you select out of that, and what is your relationship with that kind of a heavy tradition that you have in front of you?
You know, I guess, when you trace back and you say initially, as I said, I did what my gurus wanted me to do. So whatever they chose, I did. And later on, one felt that, it was just this, you felt almost, what should I say, a kind of immensity, because there was so much literature, and every side you turned, there was so much which was attractive and what you wanted to do, and then you had to be selective and say, you only have so much time in the day and so many hours, and you can't, so much creativity that you can do. So one had to kind of choose. So then there came this thing of selection, of saying, I won't do this, but this is what I really feel like doing. So I remember in the initial years, I did a lot of Sanskrit poetry. Also because I had this wonderful, wonderful Sanskrit scholar. So, he used to open up a world of, poetry and philosophy and wonderment for me. So naturally I kept going back to him for many years, because he showed me a world through Sanskrit poetry which I did not know. So that was for some years I kept on doing that. Then of course I met a Tamil scholar. So he spoke to me about Tamil poetry and the ecstasy you find in Tamil poetry. So there I was then, dived into a bit of Tamil poetry. But as I went along, I found that Sahitya was not everything. I felt I was interested in abstraction. So then I shifted, it's like I shifted. Then I started exploring, say for example, a philosophic idea of sthiti gati, stillness and movement. Then I did something called laya, again pure dance. So then I went on another path where Sahitya was not important, the word was not important. Yeah. It held importance, but it wasn't center stage for me. Obviously, being a classical artist, the word is important and poetry is important, and literature, but it wasn't center stage. I didn't have to do all my work which was sort of pegged around Sahitya. I felt I could explore without Sahitya as well. It was fine. So then it shifted. And though I say it was a language, then it became a language of dance where the word was not, like, as I said, center stage. So these were like movements within my dance which gave me different dimensions and different perspectives of how to look at dance itself.
Okay. Speaking of which, would you like to say something about your major choreographies and the points in which you felt creatively satisfied?
I think one thing, before I even touch that, I think one area I'd really like to share with an audience like this, because you know what, we can't speak about this often, so let me, is what I felt and what I feel about space.
Yes.
Again, as a student of dance, I came into, say, this place, and all I would do is just dance, right? I would just do whatever I was taught, I would repeat it, and that was a performance. As the years went by, I realized that I was not dancing in space, but I was dancing with space. So there was a shift inside me. So when I came in and I looked at space, or when I moved my arm, it is in relation to space. So when I hold that intention inside me, and then I move in space, perhaps it's the intention that I believe it sculpts space differently. Because I feel I'm dancing with space and time. I mean, these are elements like, critical for dance.
Yes.
So, I'm dancing with silence and sound. Silence and sound. And then the movement of from here to here becomes precious. It's not just taking my hand from the center and I just put it out and I bring it back. No, the covering space or stretching movement over time becomes important.
Okay. Oh.
So that gave me yet another dimension and another awareness to what is the energy field I'm creating inside me and what is this energy field around me. And again, after, as I said, this is all the sadhana and constant, shall we say, madness, passion about these things, that I feel that as an artist we can go and change the energy field in a space. I do believe it happens. Sometimes, as I said, when you do a technical, that's really boring. It's tedious, it's boring, you have to go and you have to look at the lights and keep looking and keep putting it on, putting it off. The musicians are doing the sound balance, you're standing there and it's so tedious. And then you say, no, I want to dance. When can I dance? When can I just move and create this energy?
So that is within you, the Shruti, the Tanpura, you often say is within you.
Yeah, I really feel that's why we have so much mediocrity in dance. This is another thing which I've been going on and on about. Is, I don't know, all of you might want to think about it. Is that, musicians have a Tanpura on the stage, right? So they have a pitch that they are aligning to. And if they don't align to that pitch, they are upper Shruti and, right? They cannot really perform. What does a dancer have? Do we just dance without any Shruti? Are we sort of some free-floating dancers on stage and we have no Shruti? So what is our Tambura? Where is it? Where is it? We have to locate this inside ourselves. And we have to locate it and keep it and tune it. And then dance to that alignment and the harmony which is within ourselves. And because it just really bothered me over the last 5-7 years, I've been seeing a lot of dancing and in Bharatanatyam. And I don't know why what is happening. And then I looked and I said, why is it really happening? And I said, if we had a tangible something that we had to align to, then the dancers would be able to have to match that. Otherwise they'd be out of tune. But we don't have it outside, we have it inside. But you know what, finding this inside is very difficult. It's not easy. So we work hard and we try to find this tambura inside us, that of space and time, that of alignment, that sense of equipoise, and then we dance with that centering, and then there is music. But what is happening in dance these days is that people have lost that. And we've sort of easily given it up and just given it up. And I don't know what to do. But I think this is a problem, that we don't have a physical pitch that we have to maintain, like the musicians have. And I think that's why in music we have a much higher standard. We have many more musicians, even younger generation, I'm not talking senior musicians, younger generation musicians who are wonderful. But we're not able to say that about younger dancers. And it's not that, I'm at this, point of, time in my life and I'm looking down and say, oh my God, no younger dancers. Not at all. I am longing to see younger dancers who are extraordinary. It will fill me with delight to find them. But I don't know, but it's tough. Dance is tough.
You took me to that next question, which I was going to ask you, whether you perceive that there is a kind of crisis in dance as you see now. I mean, I'm not talking about classical in that sense, not just only Bharatanatyam, but in the dance scene today, do you see a kind of crisis that is happening? Not in terms of sheer numbers. I'm not talking there's about so many people taking it up, but the involvement that you were talking about, the kind of sadhana that you talked about, the ecstasy that you were talking about. How does one get to that level in the end? Is there a kind of paucity of that material in classical arts today?
I don't know. I think we should ask the audience what you all feel, because all of you must be going for so many programs. But I think the observation is we see a lot of dance, but we don't see dance. We see dance. Where's the dance? Where's that immersion? Where is that immersion? And do we not want immersion, or are we just happy with not being immersed? Is it that if you go to a program, do we come out moved? Does something hit us? We go in and we come out and we're a bit lightheaded for some time. Isn't that part of dancing? Isn't that part of what's supposed to happen? And I think, talking about this lightheadedness, what really, as I said, one of the most important lessons I learned, which was not in a scholarly treatise or whatever, was working with my friends in their estate in Zurich, outside Zurich, in a place called Winterthur. And me and my mother were with our friends and in their estate. And it was this beautiful morning where, it was just a spring morning, and the clouds and the birds and the trees, everything was beautiful in sunlight. And then we went into this courtyard, and a rather large courtyard. And on one side was this very meditative Buddha, silent. So we walked in there and we could feel the silence, because the space had taken on that vibration. And then my friend pointed to a gong. There was a gong, a large gong on one side of this. And she said, "Have you ever struck a gong? Do you know what you do?" I said, "Oh no, I haven't done it." And she said, "Oh, this is what you do." So she gave me the striker, and she said, "You've got to put it on the gong, and you have to keep doing this, like you have to prepare the gong. And you have to keep the tension between the hand and the gong has to be firm, and you have to maintain that. And then we hit the gong, and then there is the sound of the gong. So the whole courtyard was vibrating with this sound. And then there was the silence. And then she said, "Oh, just put your ear to the gong." So I put my ear to the gong, and I could hear the deep resonance. At that moment, as I said, for me, I was really excited. So I point to my mother and say, "You know what? This is art. This has taught me everything there is to know about dance, and why I dance and why I should do it." Because for me, the connections I was making was the gong was like the body. Me putting the striker to the gong was preparing. It's the sadhana, right? We have to constantly do it, because you remove a hand, it goes, the vibration goes. So we have to constantly do it. Me striking the gong was performance. Right? It was a performance where it was for the public, it was outward, it was external, and then silence, because we think, "Oh, the show is over now." But when we put our ear to the gong, we hear resonance. That is rasa. That is for me the truth. And I feel when I dance nowadays, I said, I want to touch that. I'm really not interested in making it entertainment. It's entertainment. Why would classical dance be another form of entertainment? Do we want to say more? can we say more? Can we just shift the audience gaze towards something else? And when I touched that and I said, my God, this is Rasa. This is the truth of my life, of dance. And, thereafter, even before I was, as I said, Rasa and moment of magic was always, something, it was elusive, it would come and go. But when I saw this, and I said, there's wisdom in life, you just have to find it. There's truth around us.
I don't think I have any more questions today. I think after this beautiful moment, there is no need for anything that I need to supplement or ask you more questions about other things that I wanted to. I think I'd like to stop here. But I'd also like to see whether anybody else has a question about to Malavika.
Just wait for the minute.
Raise your hand. Yes.
Take the mic.
Thank you so much. It was a very interesting, a very focused discussion on what dance practice as an art means. I have maybe two questions. One is it possible today to cultivate rasikas as people who can create an environment around you? It's a question. I don't have any. The second question I have is, when so many aspects of our cultural heritage or tradition or whatever you want to call it are changing, how does teaching itself need to evolve in order to cultivate a student that can develop the sort of focus? I'm not saying every person can do it, but as you said, there's an intention.
I think, cultivating rasikas is hard work. And we need to do it as a society, we need to all come together and say we need to have more events, more bi-textile events, places where we can communicate, where the artist talks, because if the artist speaks about process and creative process, possibly it would get the audience interested. And if you learn to look at nuance or learn to look at detail in dance, then it gives you a certain sense of savoring, which might want the Rasika to come back, or go attend programs. But of course, I think, we need to do all this with excellence. That becomes again very important, because we need the right people to speak and talk and demonstrate, so that that level of engagement is kept with the Rasikas or the to-be Rasikas. And I think, teaching has to be different these days, because like I said, the world has changed, and there's so much, there's so many like quick fixes, which everyone expects of everything else. So I think where I find one can make a change is if you can inspire a student of dance to take the long route. But that means we have to be inspired enough about the long route to talk about it. So, sometimes when I'm doing a workshop, I said, what, do you want the straight route, like the arterial route, or do you want the scenic route? And if the students say we want the scenic route, then I said, okay, then that's where you find excitement, that's where you find discovery and surprises and things you don't know, but it takes a long time. But the person who's teaching has to be passionate enough about the scenic route and be inspiring enough to communicate this. I think inspiration goes a long way. I think in any field, and also dance, if the teachers can inspire, otherwise it can just become habit, right?
Ma'am, first of all, thank you for this extremely enlightening conversation. I am going to take home a lot, and it's a lot of food for thought. I'm not a dancer. I'm really not from this field. So for me, it is actually a lot of enlightenment. Now, what I want to ask you is, as a student of dance, a youngster who takes up dance now, ma'am, do you think there were far less distractions when you were a student than somebody taking up dance, classical music forms now, with all this internet and social media and what have you, so many different forms of entertainment that have opened up? And ma'am, if so, then how can a classical form, like traditional form like Bharatanatyam, or any other classical form of music or art, how can it work with that? How can it work with that instead of fighting that? How can it work with that?
I don't think we have to work with it. Because I think it's really distracting. It takes up a lot of time. And I don't think we have to sort of push it away either. I think we have to be moderate about, how much do we want social media and how much time do we spend on it. But I think actually it eats into the day of anybody if you're on social media and everything for a long time. I don't think that's the best way to focus on any subject, even on dance, anything you're doing. And I think it's terribly disturbing. Obviously, when I was in my 20s and 30s, we had no such thing, which was wonderful. And, I had a childhood and I could play and I could do things like that, which I think students don't have now. I think actually the younger generation right now are under huge pressure. And I think it's a very, very, very difficult time for them. And we need to be supportive. And I think where we need to be supportive is to promote excellence in dance. We need to be able to find those dancers who are excellent. Mediocrity has to be set aside. We have to go in and penetrate and say we want excellence, take those dancers, validate what they're doing and say, what, we're very, really we are impressed, we're happy with what you're doing, please do more of it. And we will support you financially, we'll support you every other way, we'll support you with performances. And you know what, we can't support a younger dancer and then say, 3 years later we'll give you another performance. That will not work. Dancers who are getting into mainstream, who show talent, have to be supported more often. And they cannot be thrown in with the bunch who are doing it, those seasonal dancers who come sometimes they dance and they go, other dancers who have deep pockets, then they are also dancing. And these few dancers who are serious and committed are lost in the noise of everything else. And I think if Raza Foundation would come forward, really support them, give them more opportunities to perform and to find themselves. And I really don't think we need to work with social media. A bit, when we have a program, everyone's worried, oh, how are we going to promote this program? What do we do? Then we say, oh, social media, come on, let's do this, that, and the other. But that can't be a part of our life. Just because it's there doesn't mean we have to, applaud it. It's okay, it's there. It's a huge distraction.
I'm here because I came to know about this program from an Insta post.
But this is terrific. This is the positive. Yeah, this is the positive result. But you know what? It's not always so positive. We have people who really don't know how to dance. They're saying that they're fantastic dancers. We have people who are flinging around opinions about them, saying this we like, we don't like, don't like, and it goes on. And then we give these dancers a sense of, something is happening in their life and actually they're not ready to dance. But we have a whole bunch of people who are just pushing them in that area. I mean, it's very disorienting, I think, actually.
Yeah, what do you think?
Namaste, ma'am. Thank you for your very intriguing thoughts. I'm a student of Drupad. I've just begun my training. So what I would like to ask you is, Drupad being a classical art form as well, do you think it is necessary for a student to imitate his or her guru initially to finally find their own voice? Or do you think you need to start to find your voice from the beginning itself?
No, I think when you're initially training, it's very important to imitate. Because from your guru you learn placing, in music, in dance, we learn the richness of a raga, we learn the prayogas, like in dance interpretation. Yeah, I think it's very important to imitate. what is not so encouraging these days is when even after they get to a point, they're still imitating. Now that's a problem. Because then after a point when they still imitate, then they become clones. And then we say, do we want to produce clones? As a matter of fact, if someone comes to my dance class, I have very few students. Nobody comes. Because they can't take the rigor of training, which is fine. The ones who can have the stamina, emotional, mental, physical, they would come and I would teach them. But I say, if anyone starts imitating me, I don't want to. If they are senior enough, they have to come to me, train and find themselves. Discover yourself. But initially, it's very important to imitate. Yeah. And also I think to be, to allow yourself, and it's not as if you're less because you imitate. You're just learning placings and the detailing of placings which a guru could teach you. But I think after that you have to. And then it's more difficult because then you're on your own.
You've thought about your dance, you have imagined it, and ultimately you have sculpted your vision. But when you are performing, and you have already meditated upon it, but when you are performing, are you trying to realize that sculpted vision, or do you throw yourself into an unknown territory as well, so that you are discovering something new?
I think all the sadhana...
Or is it going beyond that sculpted vision of yours, and it's an exploration further?
No, I think what we do with sadhana, the idea of sadhana, is to actually be able to come, whether it's a rehearsal or a performance, to dance afresh. How can we, when you have practiced it 55 times, again present it and feel fresh? What is it we do to ourselves to be refreshed enough? And I think what I have, as I said, this is just my own personal understanding, is that when I do come, whether it's a rehearsal, as I said, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be performance, it could be just a rehearsal when there's nobody else except my musicians, is to say, I have to live dance in the present. Which means I have to live it in the moment. Which means I have to bring a sense of awareness and mindfulness to my dance. If I'm able to bring that quality of energy into my being, my body and mind, then I will bring dance to the present. And that, if that is done, it's new territory all the time. Because every time you're doing it, it's refreshed.
No, on a physical level, you share the same quality with a musician, with an actor, with a dancer, whoever performs live, because each time that performance is different from the previous one.
No, but each time it could be habit. Very often it's just
No,
habit.
it may be a habit, but the performance is different in terms of degree, in terms of its temperament, in terms of its temper. But my question is, do you very consciously think that this again is a journey into the unknown? In spite of all your practices, in spite of all that you have thought about, meditated upon, do you still think that it's a journey to discover something new that you hadn't even thought of?
I think the moment we think that we are going to go into a journey which we have not thought of, I think it's processed. If I think that. I will go into a journey that is going to take me to the unknown. No. If on the other hand I come on stage, right, or in my rehearsal, and if I dance with this mindfulness, then improvisation happens in the moment. It might not. There's no guarantee on improvisation. Also, I'd like to say improvisation happens when there is mastery over that. We very easily use the word, oh, I improvise this and that. Actually, it doesn't. If it's a new work for me, it takes months of my dancing it for me to feel flow, for me to feel the comfort of entering that piece. So if there is mastery and if there is that sense of fluidity and effortlessness with the piece, and then to that if I add my focused mindfulness, then I could come on the stage or wherever, dance it, and find that I've really pushed a lot. But I can't plan to push. When I plan to push, I processed.
One more question, if you don't mind. And this is that different arts get inspired from other art forms. Do you think that also happens with classical dance, and especially with you?
All the time. All the time. I mean, we didn't talk about it, we just have to have many more sessions, right? To talk about all these other aspects, but of course, I mean, it's interdisciplinary, it's always been, the arts are always, there's a lot of osmosis between the arts. I mean, if we compartmentalize, it's our doing. It's not intended, and we don't have to. So that's another whole thing. I mean, I've been influenced by sculpture and miniature painting, and Razaji's painting, I've done productions on that. So it's a lot of things which influence, and the relationship and the conversations between art, it should be there,
Yes, yeah, please.
I was a little intrigued by, Sudhaji, you mentioned repeatedly the performance at the Chidambaram temple. I wondered if both of you could say a little more about what happened, what went on. I know you said it was almost indescribable and it was...
So that's what exactly it was, I think. I mean, I was not a direct spectator. I just saw a video of it and I understood what was happening behind it, maybe. So in that sense, I could think that I was a spectator. But what I saw was stupendous. It was something that was, that really, I mean, you have an ordinary day and your ordinary experiences and impulses that you have. But this is something that I thought transcended that by several layers, several degrees. I mean, and I thought the dancer was in complete harmony, complete communion with whatever she thought she wanted to achieve, and that was so manifest in that performance that, and also perhaps it marked the finale of her 40th year of dance, and also it was in this special place that it completely resonated with me. But I think I'll leave it to the dancer herself to explain, if she can.
If you want to see the film, it's called The Unseen Sequence. And you can find it. It's directed by Sumatra Ghoshal. He's a fabulous director. And he's made this film, it's not an applause film on what I've done and all the programs, etc. But it's really a film about the story of dance, about my journey through it, and also Sumantra's journey of documenting dance. So I would urge you to see it, and that film opens with the sequence of me dancing in Chidambaram. So all of you please, I mean, this is called The Unseen Sequence and directed by Sumatra Ghoshal. For those who haven't seen it, please go ahead and look at it.
And as she was dancing, it was as though in harmony, even the temple bells started reverberating in resonance. So it was a magical, I mean, to have seen it, maybe physically may have been a different experience, but it was communicating even through that medium that I was seeing it through.
Is it on YouTube?
May I? You have to download it.
Okay.
Please.
Wonderful, wonderful. I wish you had shown us the film, Ashok. And from Sudha's description, from your talk, it's like a moment of Satori, when there's a perfect resonance with a space which flows to each and every one of us. And today, while you speak, many of us have experienced that magic.
Well, friends, we come to the end of the evening. I think you will agree with me that this is one of the most engaging and illuminating conversation we ever had in Art Matters. And thank you, Malavika, for being so eloquent and so personal. And to Sudhaji for asking just the right question and stopping just at the right moment and allow Malavika to go ahead. So, on behalf of all of you and on behalf of the Raza Foundation and India International Center, thank the two charming ladies. They have charmed us more than ever before. And tomorrow you have in the India Habitat Center the Kumar Gandhar Memorial Lecture by Deepak Raja, and you're all most welcome there. Do come. I don't think you'll be doing anything more important than attending that lecture. And I know something about importance.
Yeah, it's really been a pleasure speaking with Sudha, and we met a few months ago, and quite accidentally somewhere. The moment we started talking, it was like I knew her for a long time.
That's right.
Yeah, a few months ago, because I heard of her work.
Of course, I have seen her.
Incidentally, I met her very long
Exactly.
time ago, and I never realized the talent she had.